The big day is here. We're going to make the combat system. If you're new to this series, that's not a big deal. You can watch this in a vacuum without having context for the rest of this series. But we have made things like the walking cycle already, and we have made the character controller in general. Today we're going to make the combat system, which again, pretty much stands on its own, so don't worry if you haven't seen everything else. If you're using your animations and stuff, that's entirely fine. If you want to use the assets you're seeing here, there's a link down below in the description as well to the Patreon, where you can get this entire project file finished with all the code and all the animator relations and transitions already put in there for you to look through. So let's get started. We have our player object here, a parent object where we have the mesh under it, and we're going to make a new script specifically for all the player related combat stuff. So let's come down here and add a script, and we'll call it something like player combat. Now, making a full combat system is a little bit more complex than what we're going to do right now. We're just going to focus on making a system that will automatically support having different combos. So based on the weapon you're holding, you're going to be using a different set of attack animations, which will then translate into, of course, being different attacks. So this entire system is very much based on the animations you're using. So we're going to start by making a couple of combat combo related variables. And the first one of those is going to be an integer for our combo counter. This will keep track of how many steps we are into our current combo. Then we'll make a float for the cooldown time between ending a combo and being able to start the next. So you can't just spam and immediately be invincible from one combo into the next. There's a little bit of downtime in between there, and you're going to want that. Personally, I'm going to set this to just 0.1 second. It's fine if this is really short. It just needs to be there. Then we'll get a float for our last clicked and a float for our last combo ended. Then we also want some character related info, and for that we're actually going to need to make a second script before we can move on with this one. But let's come back into Unity real quick and create a new C# script, and we'll call this one weapon. For now, the weapon itself isn't really going to need much in terms of programming, but we do need it to have some information. So we'll make a public string for the weapon name. You're probably going to want to have a serialized field here, which is a float for your damage. I don't think that we're going to do too much with damage calculation today. I'm mostly focusing on making the combo itself. And most importantly, we'll get a public integer for our combo length. That's what we're going to be working on mostly today. Now, we don't need the start or update functions, and we'll come back to this script a little bit later on while we're actually trying to make the attacks deal damage. But for now, just know that your weapon needs to have this information. And now that we've created that class, we can actually refer to that as a variable here. So we can just get a variable that we call current weapon. That way we can make a attack combo based on the length of the combo of the current weapon, as well as deciding which combo that is based on the name that we're giving it. So in our update function, we'll first put a if our current weapon is not equal to null. So just to check whether or not we have a weapon or not. And if we do have a weapon, so if this is true, we'll do the attack function. And that's what we're going to be making here today. Under our update here, we'll make our void attack. And this is where the magic starts. The attack is going to take one parameter, and that's going to be a string for the weapon, specifically the weapon name. So let's put that in here real quick, because we've got our current weapon. So we can put in current weapon dot weapon name, which is a string that this function can then use. And of course, since this entire thing is very much animation based, we're going to need an animator, which we can just call animator. That's fine. Quick little editing thing. I forgot to do this while recording the main tutorial. It is rather important that you do give your animator a value of get component animator. So the first thing we check for every single frame is going to be a button input. So we'll get input dot get button down, and that button is going to be fire 1. That's just what Unity comes with as far as default button inputs come. We'll worry about what actual button input this is later. Just for now, this is the Unity button system. It's fine. But aside from that, we're also going to check if time.time minus our last combo end has to be greater than, what did we call that variable again? Our cooldown time. So what this is checking is our last combo end is going to be a value that we set every time at the end of our combo. If our current time with that subtracted is greater than the cooldown time, that means more time than the cooldown time has elapsed, so we are ready to go do our next attack. If that's the case, we want to go combo counter plus plus, so we want to increase it by 1, and we want to put our combo counter to be equal to a math function called clamp, and this needs a couple of inputs. So we've got the value that we're going to be changing, that's the combo counter itself, then its minimum value, which will be 0, and its maximum value is going to be our current weapon dot combo length. So this way we can never go over the maximum length of the combo of our current weapon. This is totally variable. If we change weapon, this entire equation will act different. Then it's time to create the attack names, and this we'll do in a for loop, where we just do our usual stuff. So we'll get an integer I is equal to 0, and then we'll check for I being less than our current combo counter and I++. Just general for loop shenanigans, right? Very important editing detail here. I mistyped in both the for loops. I typed in the check being 1 less than combo counter. That definitely needs to be I less than combo counter. That should be a semicolon. And in this for loop, we're going to check for our combo in 2 parts. The first thing is going to be, is this the first hit of the combo? So we'll just check if I is exactly equal to 0, we'll do something. Else it's larger than 0, so it's 1 or above, so we'll do some other code. In here, we'll nest another if statement. This gets a little messy for reading it, but this is the easiest way to construct it. You can play around with refining this on your own. We'll check our combo counter. If it is equal to 1, so that means we've just had the first input, and then we're going to check a second little requirement here, and that will be our animator dot get current animator state info. We'll have to pass in a layer because animators can have multiple layers. We're going to be checking on layer 0, and we'll check if the currently playing animation has a tag, so is tag, and this will be a tag that we have to give to it in a moment, and we're going to be calling that tag movement. This way we can check whether or not we're currently in one of the animations that is labeled movement, so that could be the falling animation, the jumping animation, walking animation, or idle animation, all that kind of stuff, without having to worry about for a specific animation. We're just going to be checking currently playing animation, does it have this tag? If so, we'll be able to use an attack. If you have a stunned animation or a knockback animation, simply don't give it this tag and it will not allow your player to use an attack while that animation is playing. So in our animator, if that's all true, we're going to set a bool this time, and we'll set the bool called attack start to being true. And then immediately afterwards, we'll go animator and we'll set another bool. And here we're going to create the name for the first attack animation. So here we use the weapon string that we're using in this function. So we'll call weapon, and to that we'll add the word attack, and we'll also add a number to it, which will be I+1, and we'll set that to true. So if this is the first attack we're doing, and we have, for instance, a sword, right? This will enable attack start, which is kind of like a gatekeeping thing to make sure that we can only go through these animations when we're allowed to start doing attacks. And then it will check your weapon. Okay, you're holding a sword, so you're going to be doing a sword attack, and you're going to be doing I+1 into that combo. So I starts at 0, so this is going to be 1, so you will be doing sword attack 1. Then we'll put our last clicked to be equal to time.time, and from here you can also enable things like invincibility frames and stuff like that. We're not going to do that for now. We're going to keep things simple because this is honestly quite complex, you know. Then we're going to copy this entire if statement, and we're going to paste that into the else, and we're going to obviously change a couple of things about it. So here we'll check if our combo counter is greater or equal to, in these parentheses, I plus 1. And instead of checking for if we're in a movement animation, we're going to change this is tag to is name. We're going to be looking for a specific animation. This way, we can only ever do the second attack if we're currently doing the first attack. And we can only do the third attack if we're doing the second attack currently. So we can never skip from attack 1 to attack 3 if we mash very, very fast through the buttons, for instance. So we'll get this little bit over here, weapon, attack, and I combined. So what we're doing is if we want to do attack number 2, we're checking here for the combo counter, and then we're checking if we're currently doing attack number 1. We don't need attack start to being set to true anymore, so we can get rid of this line, but we'll add a new line below this, because what we'll need to do is once we enable this bool for the next attack, we need to disable the bool that'll let us to doing attack number 1 in the first place. So what we'll get is when we start our combo, we go through attack start. Don't worry, we'll disable that in a second as well. And we'll also go to attack number 1. But then when we go to attack number 2, we need to close the gates for attack number 1. Otherwise, when we end the combo, we're going to go straight back into the combo, even if we're not pressing the attack button. So what we do here is we open the gate to be able to go to the next animation, and at the same time, we're closing the gate behind us for the animation that we've just done. And that's the basic idea there. So at the very bottom of all this, outside this if statement, so we can close this if statement down, suddenly this entire function doesn't look as complicated anymore. We're going to put in some animation exit bool reset. What that means is we're just going to check when we finish an animation. We also need to disable that gate. We need to close the gate when the animation is finished, not just when we move on to the next animation. So if we stop after the second attack, we still need to close gate number 1. That will also do with a for loop, which you get the point here. So then we'll put in an if statement. It does correctly anticipate that, and we'll get our animator, get current animator state info at layer 0 dot normalized time is greater than 0.9f. So this is checking for whether or not the current animation that's playing is more than 90% the way done. So the last 10% of your animation are actually going to get cut off. The reason we're not doing this at like 99% is because we want to have a little bit of space for the engine to blend between the animation. So make your animations in such a way that the last 10% of those animations don't include vital pieces of movement or anything like that. So if that's the case, and we're also going to check for I'm just going to copy this get animator state info because it's quite a lot to type, and we'll check another is name, and here we're going to do the same thing again. So we'll put in our weapon plus attack plus in these parentheses I plus 1. Again, this is just looping through all the different animations and checking for every single animation in this weapon for every frame. If you're past 90%, we need to end it. And this loop will run 3 times for a weapon that has 3 combo. It will run 15 times for a weapon that has a combo of 15. So it's a very flexible system. And this will just reset us back to base. So we'll go combo counter is now equal to 0 again. Our last combo end is equal to our current time dot time. We'll set our animator set bool for our weapon attack I plus 1 to being false, and we'll also set our animator the set bool for attack start to being false. So this just ends the combo. No matter where you are in the combo, as soon as you hit 90% of the animation, it's going to end your combo. Naturally, if you finish the entire combo, you're going to reach the end of the last animation in your combo, and this code will run anyway, but it will also run if you hit 90% in your first animation, in your second animation, in the 5th animation, in the 20th animation, and so on and so forth. So that might have been a little bit dense because it is a lot of coding and a lot of relatively abstract coding where we have systems that are working on systems and we don't have very much concrete data. But that's kind of the point here, because this entire system will take in 2 little bits of information and just play your animation. So let's have a look over the entire code here. You can check it against your own code, see if there's any differences. That might be the issue here. It goes a little bit off screen, just so that you can see. There we go. Now let's jump into the engine. So if you missed the last time, you'll have missed me making this animator. I'm assuming if you're looking into something like a combo system, you probably know enough about Unity to know what the animator window is and how the animator component roughly works. If not, go watch the last video real quick and come back to this It's very short, very sweet, kind of important that you understand the basics of the animator window. So in this project, you'll see I have 3 sword attacks. So I have sword attack 1, sword attack 2, and sword attack 3. They're already named properly to work with this system. Your animations might not be, but if you just go into the state and you can change its name to whatever you want without actually changing the animation's name, it's checking for this name here, not the name of the motion. Let's also put the tag that we made, movement, into our idle and running animation. That way we can actually go from our blend tree to our attack combo. We're also going to make a empty state here, and that's going to be the gate that allows us to go into different combos. So we called that attack start. So we're going to call this new empty state attack start. This one doesn't necessarily need to be called attack start, but I like calling the states to match the bool names that we're going to be making. Now we're going to start making a lot of parameters, which are all going to be boolean. So we make a bool, we call it attack start, and then we can right click on our blend tree here, and we can make transition to attack start. We then click on that transition, we get a whole lot of settings. We're going to disable has exit time. If you have this enabled, it will only transition to the next animation once the current animation is finished play. We obviously don't want that. Instead, we're going to add a condition here, and that condition is going to be attack start being true. So when this is set to true, we'll move to this state over here. Then we'll make a new bool, and we'll call this sword attack 1. Do make sure that your capitalization between your code and these booleans is consistent, because it is case sensitive. And we'll also make a sword attack 2 and a sword attack 3, where we can then make the transition from attack start to sword attack 1, then to sword attack 2, then to sword attack 3. The reason we have this attack start is just for organizational purposes, because if we've got a different weapon, let's say a warhammer, we can just branch off this attack start and make our warhammer combo here. And maybe we have a axe combo as well. We can just put that here, and it doesn't get as messy. So from a technical level, this isn't really necessary. It's just for organizational purposes. So please do that. You will thank me later. And we'll do the same here. So all of these will disable the exit time. Well, this one doesn't have an animation in it, so we'll go into our conditions and we'll put sword attack 1 being true. And then in sword attack 1, obviously, we disable the has exit time, and we check if sword attack 2 is equal to true. Sword attack 3, I think you get the point at this point, we check if sword attack 3 is set to true. Then we'll get this exit node over here, and don't mind my mouse being a little weird. We'll make a transition from every single one of these animations to the exit node as well. This one will just have exit time, meaning that if this animation finishes, so it gets to the very end of the animation, it will just go through the exit node and end up back in the entry at our blend tree at any point in the combo. So this can get a little messy with a lot of combos still, because you've got all these lines going all over the place. So what we can do instead is we can right click and create a sub state machine, and we can just call that something like sword combo, and we can simply move all that into here. So if we double click this, we get a sub state machine which still has access to all these parameters, so don't worry about that. So we can just put all that in here, and if your entry doesn't automatically hook up to sword attack 1 but instead 2 or 3, that's possible. You can right click the entry and set state machine default states, and you can just hook up into sword attack number 1. And then if we hook all of these up into the exit like we did in the other state machine, all with has exit time as well, we can now suddenly delete all this, and we just have one single node that does all that. So we can just hook that up into there, and we can just make the transition into this substate machine. It will ask us whether or not we want to hook it up into any specific state, or if we want to hook it up into the state machine as a whole. You can put it into sword attack 1, or you can just put it into sword combo. It doesn't really matter. And then whenever this sword combo is exited, we make a transition to the exit here so that we end up back at the entry point. This way you can make entire combos in one node, and things are a little bit less messy. Again, from a technical level, not necessary, but once you start building this out and having like 10 different combos, this does become very, very important. Do not forget to check all of your transitions as well, because if you're redoing a lot of transitions, you might forget to disable exit time on one, and maybe you forgot to put your sword attack 1 check in this one, which wouldn't be great. So now let's go check in the input manager what fire number 1 is. That's left control or mouse 0. So now when we're in game and we press either left control or mouse, nothing happens. And would anybody be willing to give me a shot as to why nothing happens? I could sit here a long time on pre-recording this, so nobody is going to answer. Pretty easy, because we don't have a weapon. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? So let's get using this sword that I've made, right? So we can, in our player mesh, try to find the hand that holds the sword, which is this hand in my case. So we can go from spine to left shoulder, or the right shoulder rather. He's right-handed. And in his right hand, we can then add in this sword, which is rather fucking huge. So let's put this back to a normal size. And we can make this as big and rotate it into the proper position as we want. So once you've done that, you've got the actual like physical weapon. It's a little clunky here, but it'll do. I'll make it a little bit bigger just because. And we're going to put the weapon script that we made at the very beginning of this video. I don't know if you remember how we made a weapon script. We're going to put that on this as well. And that weapon name is going to be sword. Its damage, we're not going to do anything with it, so let's set it to 5. And its combo length, we have discussed great length is 3 hits. Now, if you have a game where you can switch weapons on the go and that kind of stuff, you're going to need to program that in for yourself. For the time being, our current weapon, I'm just going to make that a serialized field so that I can drag in the weapon in the Unity editor itself. So when we go up to player, we have a current weapon. I'll just drag in the sword. It'll get the weapon scripts of that sword. And now, while in engine, if we start pressing the attack button, you can see that we are doing our attacking combo. Now, there's a lot of refinement and polishing that you might want to be able to do. And there certainly is some room for improvement as far as clearing out the attack booleans and stuff like that, because it doesn't technically clear them all out at the end of your combo. It just clears out the ones that would infinitely loop you, which is fine because they'll get reset when you start a new combo anyway. But that, in way too much detail, is the basic idea for the combo system. Now, making this so that it also actually damages enemies requires some collision checks and stuff like that. We'll make a video about that in the future, but this is the most complicated stuff done, and all the actual like combat damage calculation mechanics are very much up to you and your imagination for your game. Again, I know it's a lot. You can watch through this video a couple of times and see with all my mistakes corrected hopefully during the editing, because I did make a couple of mistakes during the recording of this video. You can watch through this video and compare your own code against mine if you want to. There's also a link down below in the description to this project file as it is right now. At the end of this tutorial, with a working combo system, you get all the models and animations included in it, so you can play around with it yourself and you can look at the actual project, my actual code, and compare it to your own if you want to. There's a link down below in the description to my Patreon to get that. Next time, we're gonna probably dive into something, I don't know what. Until then, I'll see you back next time. Bye.